Silence! A black woman is speaking, and you will listen. And maybe like the video, thank you. In any case, you have probably already heard that Metroid Prime 4 is garbage. It's slop. Even worse, it's a slop cake. It's not necessarily woke, but it is so absolutely lackluster in absolutely every way humanly possible. And needless to say, because it belongs to the same IP holders that Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Winds of the whatever belong to, they literally just tried to make Metroid into a Zelda game, which is kind of hilarious and extremely stupid at the same time. The Metroid 4 game does pretty much absolutely nothing right. You probably already know about some of its worst downfalls, aka the insert of the zoomer humor, which is horrible, absolutely garbage. Wow. It's disappointing. Well, needless to say, yeah, this is the world where we live in. We have transcended from slop to literal slop cakes, okay? It's not the cheese factory, it's the slop factory.
Metroid Prime 4 is incredibly disappointing. If I had to use one word to describe it, the word I'd choose is outdated. And if I had to use two words, I'd say painfully uneven. The return of retro studios to
yeah, it's not necessarily correct to call this woke. It's technically kind of not. But I mean, it's woke adjacent, and this is the modern audience. This is the modern audience on steroids.
The franchise, after 15 years, feels very much like it's the result of ideas that are 15 years old. This isn't a nostalgic return to form or a company unwilling to innovate. Its bare-bones attempts to modernize are rooted in some sort of Marvel movie ragtag group of annoyances. Its nostalgic sensibilities in a world without fast travel but nothing to warrant the decision. All of this while its contemporaries from Zelda to Mario to Pikmin, even 2D Metroid games that are now 4 years old, have managed to step into a new era, unafraid to blaze a
People like this 2D Metroid game so much, absolutely more than, well, Metroid Prime 4, it's unbelievable.
Path and set new trends. The kindest thing I can say about Metroid Prime 4 is that when you're deep in one of its dungeons, it can...
You know what's my favorite part? You know what's my favorite slop design part? This is one of my favorite things. I never get to talk about this because so rarely games actually utilize it. But it's exactly what you're seeing right in front of you. And it's not the layout, the design, the anything. It is this. It is this. Okay? You see?
Set new trends.
What?
The kindest thing...
Okay? See? It's you on a bike, and then because the game is dull, boring, and slow, they added a speed meter right here. And it's just there, so the lowest IQ of individuals will look at it and they're like, I'm going really fast! I'm going really fast! I'm a speedster! That's what it is. This is my peak favorite slop design. Oh, it does not get implemented enough. If a game has this, you have some kind of vehicle and it moves ridiculously slowly. You have a speed meter and it goes into the color red because it's fast. You know the game is garbage. This is a 100% telltale sign that the game is just shit. Okay? And the best part is, they know it's garbage, they know it's lame, they know it's boring, the driving mechanics are stupid and sad and bad. So they add this, and they fake it so you always feel cool. For example, this is supposed to be 92, which is not a lot, but it's probably supposed to be, you know, way faster than your average modern-day vehicle. And look how it's moving.
I can say about Metroid Prime 4 is...
And then this is 200.
That when you're deep in one of its dungeons, it can still evoke the atmosphere and ambiance that only Metroid Prime can. A first...
Oh boy, man, that is just disappointment at its finest. Oh boy.
Person adventure puzzler that comforts you in how predictably it will play out, but with new locations in which to solve familiar puzzles. None of its highs, to me, come close to others in the first 3 games in the series, but the Prime flavor you can only get from the series is here sometimes. But it's tucked away between a heaping majority of misguided, ill-designed time wasting that shows that none of the lessons have been learned, leading to a game that neither builds on the legacy of the franchise nor attempts to make it stand with other great games from the last 15 years.
And yeah, this is literally of a joy.
It doesn't learn from the design ethos of Hollow Knight or Blasphemous or Metroid Dread. It doesn't learn from its cousins in the Soul series or the newly popular genre of Kingsfield-likes, which are first-person retro fantasy games that look to create the same sense of adventure, exploration, and progression that the Prime series does. It's learned nothing. And for a game that learned nothing, the feeling I had once I finished it was snuck between emptiness and relief. Now I know what some of you are thinking, oh no, Mug is going to criticize a Nintendo game? What else is new?
Yeah, well, he fucking should.
Water's wet, but that's not true at all. I criticize Nintendo as a company, as a corporation. I criticize their greedy decisions, but their video games tend to be the whole point. People still tolerate them. This very year, I thought Donkey Kong Bonanza was exceptional, if not really good enough to justify buying a Switch 2 for it. And honestly, in case you couldn't tell by the tone of this intro, I actually recommend Kirby Air Riders more than I do Metroid Prime 4. It's not for everybody, but it's incredibly fun. I don't tend to be very critical of Nintendo's games. This has been a huge surprise.
If you're not a Nintendo fan, I'm not, then you're probably thinking, how do I not know a single person who plays Mario? Which is true, isn't it? I don't know a single person who plays Mario or any of those games. It just doesn't make sense that Nintendo exists even, honestly, in my opinion. Like, the world is just somehow showing me that Nintendo is it's not real. Nintendo's not real. Like, no, I know no one who plays these games. I know no one who buys this shit. Everything else I know, people buy it and people consume it and people whatever. But this Nintendo garbage, like, bruv, I don't know anyone who plays these games. I honestly just don't.
And an incredibly painful one. Metroid and Castlevania are two of
And my friend group is pretty diverse. They're all maybe a little bit, odd. But, it is what it is.
My favorite series of all times, and they contributed to my love of Metroidvanias today and directly into my obsession with From Software and Souls-likes. Metroid Prime 1 specifically is an incredibly dear game to me that completely changed my perception of how video games could be, especially going from something like Super Metroid to Metroid Prime. It was a whole new world and a whole new perspective for a younger version of myself, coming from Mario 64 and then Ocarina of Time, and then getting to see Metroid on the GameCube in a completely new light. And my expectations for this game were not sky high, but definitely not expecting what happened. I take absolutely no pleasure in what I'm going to say about Metroid Prime 4, but I think there's a lot of very important lessons to be learned from this game because
Probably
it makes a hell of a lot of mistakes. And that's why we're going to dive into all of that. And by the way, hi, I'm Mug, and if you're new here, welcome. And if you're not,
Let's go, baby.
Metroid Prime 4 places you once again in the boots of the legendary bounty hunter Samus Aran, who is helping out the Galactic Federation before being teleported to the planet of Vuros along with...
Now, granted, that's not exactly true. You're some kind of cheap copy imitation of Samus in this game. You're not a badass. You're just kind of a... You're kind of humanized, which makes it a lot lamer.
The crew of Galfed members. Here you uncover the legacy of the Lamorn and take on the mysteries of the planet and the main antagonist that I won't spoil, and all the while gathering members of the crew. The structure can be loosely described as Ocarina of Time, but Metroid. You start in Fury Green, a forested area, and from there you will travel to 4 other dungeons that are spread out in each corner of a connecting hub known as Soul Valley. These dungeons are themed around lightning, ice, fire, and a final dungeon, with you eventually getting the associated elemental ability.
So you're gonna talk about the fact that the storyline is kind of tied to like climate fucking change or not? I wonder.
abilities from each of them. These themed dungeons, the Volt Forge, the Ice Belt, and the Flare Pool, are the highlights of the game. You'll solve both navigational and more traditional puzzles as you make your way through them, although never anything that's going to break your brain, but you will be jotting down areas of interest for when you have more abilities, and when you head towards a final boss of the dungeon, you will be awarded with a new ability as well as a teleporter key, the main objective of the game. The bosses are more often than not an interesting puzzle to solve in themselves, with their own mechanics, patterns,
Are
and
they?
spectacle as you'd expect from the franchise, with only a few being seriously bad. And the theming for the dungeons is a decent highlight. The Ice Belt is a research facility that gives insight into the Grievers, the fodder enemies of the game, as well as Lemorn tech. The Flare Pool explains the energy source that is crucial to their society, and the Volt Forge, aside from having the best soundtrack in the game, are these huge towers of lightning that serve as manufacturing centers for Lemorn tech. And most important of all that tech is Viola. Viola is both Samus' new suit and her new motorcycle. And this is the most important part of the game and also one of the 2 new additions to the franchise. See, there's no new game-defining power-ups in Prime 4. There's no parry system, no new sort of boots or enhanced on-foot mobility. It's all stuff you've seen before, but slightly remixed with a couple of very iconic powers missing. You've got your elemental ammo for the arm cannon that can be upgraded into charged shots, and eventually your super missiles and power bombs, now changed to be psychic, as is the general theme of the game that ties into the Beyond subtitle. But there are 2 new toys: the control beam, which allows you to fire a beam that slows down time as you manually control it, and Viola, the motorcycle. And this motorcycle is very present in the game because you'll need it to traverse Soul Valley, the massive desert that connects the game's areas, and here is where the very long list of problems begins. Now, it's come to my attention that there are many jokes being made about Soul Valley online, from how empty it is to how pointless it is, or the fact that Nintendo has continued with its abhorrent behavior and decided that if you want to listen to any music tracks while you're spending potentially hours out driving in the desert, you need to buy the Samus amiibo to unlock Viola Radio. While some people say that obtaining 100% scans or beating the game unlocks that radio as well, it appears that's not the case, and you actually unlock extra music tracks, but you can only use those extra tracks if you have the amiibo. Which, by the way, I'm not here to talk about those things, but I've seen a lot of people say that actually there's a ton of great music out in the desert, so just to make sure you're informed, here's an unedited clip of how the desert sounds.
Based. I don't know about you, but I'm suddenly convinced I love slop.
I've heard a lot of BS in my day, but this one might take the cake, man. I'm not here to reiterate those points.
Listen, it's Nintendo. There's gonna be Nintendo fanboys and defenders saying that anything Nintendo does is pure gold, good, and whatnot. So the fact that they're gonna do this and blatantly, effectively lie about the fact there's music in the game, yeah, that's kind of to be expected. Part of the course, really.
But to explain how actively harmful Soul Valley is to the rest of the game. You see, Soul Valley serves 3 main purposes. Firstly, it separates the different dungeons and contextualizes Vuros, which is fine and dandy. It's the Hyrule field of Metroid Prime 4. Its second job is to be home to small points of interest for optional exploration. There's 6 different shrines with small puzzles in each of them that house the charged and supercharged versions of each elemental shot, as well as small hidden upgrades.
Is he not gonna mention the fact that playing this game, every puzzle you come across in 3 seconds is like hinted and explained by your annoying millennial companion? Oh, you can turn into a ball. Neat. Oh, maybe this looks important, Samus. This looks important, Samus. Just go in the room, Samus.
Its third function, however, is to house 2 mandatory objectives that are necessary to finish the game. Those being 4 out of 6 mech parts needed to access the final boss, and the green crystals, of which you need to collect way too many in order to obtain 4 different upgrades, and the memory fruit, which is again necessary to finish the game. The mech parts aren't accessible until endgame, but the green crystals are everywhere from the start. This means that it's in your best interest to, whenever you're out and about, take the time to drive into the crystals and accumulate them, since you'll get some useful upgrades, but also you'll have to do so anyways eventually. And this is where I have to ask the question,
why?
What is at the core of a Metroidvania's loop? Looking at the primary examples of the genre, Super Metroid and Symphony of the Night, the basics of it all were in place well over 25 years ago. Basics that would see themselves reflected not just in the strictest followers of the genre, but in hundreds of games that took cues from them. The ability to explore a large map where you are constantly limited in how you progress, but never explicitly told where to go or what to do. This framework allows you, the player, the sense of progression and discovery that defines many games. You might obtain new abilities that open up new sections of the map and creative uses of them to find secrets. You might power up, from missile expansions in Metroid to new weapons in Castlevania to leveling up in a Souls-like. It's thanks to this framework that a staple of the genre is to re-explore previous areas after each major upgrade, hunting for secrets and other means of powering up. In this regard, Metroid Prime 4 fails catastrophically, and Soul Valley is a large part of that failure. After every upgrade, if you wanted to explore previous areas, you'd subject yourself to the arduous task of crossing Soul Valley multiple times to and from each area. I believe someone on the design team thought this would be justified and even interesting to the player by having that constant mission of collecting
They surely did.
green crystals or the 6 optional shrines. While from an objective perspective, every time you are in the desert you want to collect green crystals, this forgets something very important. And the question is it fun to collect those crystals?
No.
And the short answer is no. The long answer is that it's an infuriating slog that
Yeah, okay, I'll sum this up for you, by the way. Just a quick and easy one. Too much collection. All of the collection is pretty much useless. There are some points where collecting stuff is needed, which is bad because it's annoying. There are some unlocks that you get that are completely useless. There are unlocks that are supposed to be used to do certain things, but those things are not worth it. And there are very poorly made bosses that don't allow you to properly utilize the unlocks that you have to defeat them because it's just too poorly made. That is the game. Everything here is too poorly made. And the funny part is, as far as I can understand, this thing was once scrapped because the previous version of whatever the fuck existed before this was even worse. Can you imagine? Can you actually imagine? This game is already an absolutely massive disappointment for all of the Metroid fans, like all 3 of them. But, the previous one was even worse. That is needless to say pretty impressive, I would like to say. Imagine something was so much worse than this. Literally a desert filled with absolutely nothing. And being like half of the game, where you spend half of your stupid game because reasons. Imagine that, imagine something being worse than that. That the people who think that this is acceptable made something previously that even they thought is unacceptable. Yeah, exactly. That sounds like hell on earth. In any case, I mean, where do we even go here? It's kind of tame. Let's see what else he has to say.
Something that is absent from other games, be they first
look,
or
it's the
third-person
bosses.
adventures or 2D side-scrollers. In many Metroidvanias, including previous Metroid games, the design of the world was meant to feel expansive and mysterious at first, and then a speedrun circuit by the end. Your different abilities and powers allowing you to find new shortcuts, make previous obstacles trivial, and have a completely different perspective on how to navigate the map. In a different game with a similar open world but punctuated by dungeons, we have Elden Ring. Not only is the
Yeah, I mean, the open world in this game is just poorly made. Elden Ring is completely different.
open world you explore littered with rewarding challenges and interesting locations, but those locations, if enterable, offer constant shortcuts to mark your progress, and the travel time is minimized with fast travel if you so wish. But it feels as though Prime 4 is too proud to admit defeat, too proud to offer fast travel. It's committed to its vision of immersion in this world, which I would normally applaud, but I've never wanted to be immersed in a muddy pile of quicksand. The most painful part of Metroid Prime 4 is how it handles rewards and progression, and to me this is the point where the core of it all.
I mean, yeah, look at this. Again, look at this. So, there's a giant desert of nothing, and then there's just, like, a couple of points of interest that are mini dungeons, effectively.
Feels outdated.
Yeah, that's not gonna be good.
If you were to return to explore areas, you'd
Not to mention, how lazy is this, by the way? It's lazy on so many levels, it's insane.
constantly be pestered by enemies, but the combat in Metroid Prime 4 is not a forte. Even compared to Metroid Dread and its use of the parry, Metroid Prime 4 has no depth to its combat. Even Metroid Prime 3, often considered the worst of the series, took advantage of the Wiimote and Nunchuck with the lasso and switching your beams mid-combat, along with the added precision of the Wiimote pointer. Prime 4, by comparison, is slow and uninteresting. You circle strafe and spam shots. Sometimes you switch to a different beam if an enemy is weak to it, and when you're too tired to engage, you use resources for one of your super attacks. But that doesn't stop the game from constantly putting you in situations where you fight waves upon waves of enemies, where the best solution is to spam your regular beam shots until you wear out your thumb or trigger finger. And that's if you're lucky enough to be fighting enemies that allow you to hit them instead of enemies that constantly teleport, giving you the smallest of openings and turning the fight into a 5-minute test of patience, or at least until you get the ice beam. But
Base, that's at least how they get more the game longer than 10 minutes. In any case, I don't even know what good to say about this. He's skipping a lot of details about, you know, how annoying going through this game is because your companion never shuts up for more than 10 seconds. I mean, that is a whole... Okay, actually, no, let's see what he has to say. Maybe there is something.
talked at by the Galactic Federation crew. Mackenzie will constantly radio you and pester you with where you're meant to go. Takobi will tell you his sob story by encountering him in Soul Valley at Endgame. Armstrong will fangirl over Samus the legendary bounty hunter and tell you to be
Oh yeah, the robot, right.
careful out there. But there's no real cohesion or camaraderie amongst the crew.
Because it's cheap and soulless. Yes, exactly. Anyway, that was Mug Thief. 10 out of 10. Bye!